the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 110, recorded Friday, September 27th, 2013. X-10 is dead.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. It's time for AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. This is Tim Albright, your host. Thanks so much for joining us. With us this week is Brad Grimes, the senior editor at InfoComm International. How are you, sir?
Good, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is Dan Fulmer. He is the CEO of Fultech Solutions. Hello, Dan.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks.
Also with us is Chris Neto. Chris is from AVHelpdesk. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
And also with us is Joshua Stackhouse. If you've listened to the show before, Josh is an up-and-coming AV professional. He has an actual degree, and now he has a real AV job. Josh is the audio-visual systems technician at AMS. Congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
This week, we're going to talk about a whole lot of things. Revolabs has some interesting thoughts. Savant is doing interesting things. We're going to chat a little bit about 4K and deep color. Yay, deep color. But first, Crestron. and I am a Crestron user. I'm a Crestron programmer, not a certified or anything like that. But at the college that I work for, I am the Crestron guy. So I'm not, this is not a slam on them, but I was going through Google Plus a couple days ago, and somebody just kind of posted this, and the comment was, "What the heck is this?" It was a link to the Crestron application market. So, Chris, I'll ask you, what the heck is this?
Did they sell tunes on it?
No, they don't sell. They don't sell anything yet. By the way, everything's zeros. I mean, everything's free. Real quickly, and I shouldn't just kick it off. I shouldn't have just thrown it. There are modules. There are IR drivers. There's GUI themes. There's GUI resources. It reminds me, if you're familiar with Crestron, and AMX has stuff like this as well. It reminds me of their certified partner program, where you can go in and you can download modules that have been made either by Crestron and in partnership with the Sony and Sharp and people like that, or it's made by the manufacturer with Crestron's help. That's what it reminds me of. Only it's application market, and it's modeled after the app market on iOS. So what the heck?
It looks, I'm checking it out right now. It looks pretty interesting. Getting those things, and I'm not a Crestron programmer, but finding drivers and that the database of what's out there that you can control. Maybe this is just a logical way of putting it out there for programmers to go out and find it, and making it easy for people to get the right drivers and the correct pieces that they need to control the equipment. It may be an idea, but looking at this stuff down on the columns that they offer, IR drivers, GUIs, and themes, I guess people are going to start putting together some, free themes and free GUIs for people to start sharing, I guess, maybe. So I don't know.
I actually ran across, I found out about this weirdly backwards, because one of our guys, Scott Tyner, who's on the EdTech show with us, sent me an email that Crestron had sent him and said, "Hey, by the way, check out our new market," after I had found out about it. And apparently people are going to be able to build their own modules and their own GUIs and sell them on the App Store. So they're developing this interesting little ecosystem where it's very Apple-ish. It's very Apple-esque. And this is not the first time that Crestron has tried to emulate Apple. I mean, they've had a long history of doing a lot of iOS and Apple-centric devices. John, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is Dan. It's funny. I was just talking to a manufacturer last week, and I won't say which one, but I see their module on here, and they actually were talking about paying someone to do their module for them and putting it on here. I guess somehow this differs in some way from the partner program, because it looks like the similar end result, but something must be different in the way that they put these together, maybe.
And you're right, Dan, because when you click on, like you hover over modules, and you can search by manufacturer and device type, which, by the way, is also how you do it in the partner program section of the website. The one interesting thing here is that I didn't have to log in with my username and password to get access to this. I'm wondering maybe if they're opening this up to others, or if I may be automatically logged in too. But I don't see, there's a sign in or create account, so I'm not logged in. So this is an interesting turn for Crestron, I guess. Well, go ahead.
I think one of the big complaints has always been that Crestron is difficult to program. I think that comes from not knowing how to program, and I'm a programmer. Some others on here are programmers, but maybe it's an attempt to kind of assist some of the dealers that have a tough time getting the programming done. So put some stuff out there that helps them kind of dibble through the little steps, and maybe it'll help them. I disagree. I think we should bring the dealer quality level up, and they learn how to program better. But maybe this is an attempt just to help vet that market.
Well, would this, as a programmer, would you go to this app store to download some of these modules? Because it's not just the modules, but if you as you're looking at it, we'll put a link on the website. There are GUI interfaces in conjunction with the modules. So is this a place that you would go, Dan?
I don't know. I think on the back end, one of the conversations I had with that manufacturer was the fact that he had spent a decent amount of money on the programming portion of it, and he said the front end, the interface, the GUI, wasn't that great. And I said, well, the real deal is, if I'm doing a whole house system, I'm going to have my own graphics. So I'm probably going to take your data and put that into my own graphics anyway. So I think from a graphics standpoint, you got to look at it that way. Otherwise, from a programming standpoint, I may dip into this if I had an odd part that we hadn't done before or something, and maybe it would help with that. But otherwise, we're going to do most of our stuff on our own, especially simple stuff.
Or maybe you could take their GUI and make that the center point, because there are some that are actually pretty cool. They have a Panasonic KX VC300 here that's an interesting black with red, and some of their other actual GUIs and themes. The one thing that I ran across, oh good Lord, 2 or 3 years ago, was a number of different companies that just flat out sold themes, totally separate from Crestron, totally separate. But it was, and they weren't incredibly expensive. They were more than what we could afford at the college. But it was an interesting idea, because then you could have one company had NFL teams, and you could completely change the background and the buttons depending on who your client's favorite team was, and it seems to be very residential focused, right? But it was a neat idea, though, the fact that this company basically had a store, and this store, the Crestron app store, reminds me of that company's store. It's very interesting. Josh, you have gone to school for AV, and when it comes to learning all the different aspects, is this something that somebody like you or one of your fellow classmates could do maybe on the side to make some extra money and create modules and create graphical user interfaces for folks to download from Crestron's app store?
Well, this isn't really reflective of anything that we studied in school. I mean, the extent of our automation is more theory-based, so we'll study the concepts of how to write a proper macro sequence so that when a customer hands you hand the remote to a customer in a resi environment or a commercial environment, it's natural and intuitive. So this is really actually a little bit beyond my scope, having no familiarity with Crestron, although I do have to say that I find that it's kind of amusing that when you click on the button, it says, wow, you found a great price. We can't seem to find this product for less, and everything is free. So I guess I just have to hand it back to you, Tim. I really just can't comment.
You're right. Everything is free currently. Brad, you've been around the AV industry a long time, not just in the InfoComm role, but before this, you were a highly touted editor of a very nice publication. Have you seen anything like this before, where a company like Crestron has gone after what seems to be? It doesn't seem to be like the dealers, or does it? I guess.
I mean, you see things like this in different markets, and you see it throughout AV and IT in different ways. But I think what we're really trying to get at here is first of all, centralized resource and a little bit of quality control. I mean, these folks are going to have to upload their software to Crestron. Crestron is going to look at it. I think they even reserve the right to kick back feedback and bug fixes and things like that. What they're going to charge for these things eventually, I don't know. I love that they're all $0.00 right now. That makes a lot of sense. But I think it's I think it's a great resource, and it should help centralize an effort to basically put everything on their control system platform. I mean, there's a lot of manufacturers represented here. A lot of people have been working on it. And there should hopefully be a little quality control as well. Now, I don't know what kind of feedback Crestron gives, whether they prefer some of these manufacturers do their modules or their drivers a different way. But if not, they're helping them debug their software. Hopefully we'll just all get a higher level of quality from some of these things.
I didn't think about the quality control. That's a really good point. The fact that they're centralizing it, and again, they reserve the right to give you feedback and possibly kick it back if it's not working for them, and put it through the rigors, kind of like, again, very Apple-esque. When you submit an app to Apple, they do the exact same thing. They have to qualify it before they put it on the App Store. So
I think there definitely need to be some quality control, but the other thing I see here is from a dealer like me who's had, just because we've been around a long time, had to write a lot of our own modules. This would be a great outlet to maybe sell some of those modules. I see it, it says choose from over 1,000 free time-saving modules, but if they expect, other partners or dealers to, give them software to put out there, it may be software that maybe has some advancements upon the basic stuff that you can get for free, such as done a J&D pull module for somebody that had basically 5 of those units daisy chained together. So we had to write the module for that expansion of it. And, it's all in Simple Plus. You could upload that and people could pay, X amount of dollars for that, and they get a more advanced feature set than they got off the normal free one. So it may be an outlet for dealers who have some stuff that's more advanced to make some money on it.
That's a really good point. So you could recoup some of those costs. Maybe you don't put the entire cost of that module creation in that one job, and give your customer a heart attack. What? I had to pay how much for this? You can offset some of those costs by selling it on this market and giving your customer a break.
Exactly. And we do that typically anyway. If we spend a lot of development time on a specific product, we try to, break that cost down over several product or installations over at least a year. And this, again, would help dealers like me to offset that even further. I think it'd be a good idea in that market, as long as everything's not free. I don't know how many guys, like Josh said, are going to donate their time to do free software and then donate to this. So
I'm wondering if some of these GUIs are already created by Crestron or were farmed out by Crestron, and the modules also, and then they used the existing infrastructure to kind of seed the market, as it were, because there's only one thing on here that costs right now, and it's $699. So that's a Riviera cold Elevate theme. So, and it's pretty if you like blue. I'm gonna move on.
Hey, Tim?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about the other types of markets that are out there from the Android market and iOS and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that in your opinion, can you foresee this happening where maybe the independent programmers that are out there are taking this stuff and, when they're on downtime, in between jobs, for example, are creating modules that they have or taking the modules that they have and using it as a source of income?
They can't. I do see that. Here's the sticky question though for you, and Dan can chime in on this as the owner of a company. Whose is it? Because seriously, there are so many.
But I specifically said independent programmers.
Well, I know, but there are independent programming companies, right? They're not just in Crestron's world, they're called CSPs now. They used to be called Capes. But right, if it's a whole company of independent programming, maybe I should know. Yeah, you did say independent, didn't you? So.
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
You still do run into that who owns the code thing. And,
yes.
You basically have to get into the copywriting issues of writing code because, people have discussed this before, and if you're getting the actual software to write the code from Crestron or a manufacturer, for instance, then they technically own that part of it. So what part do you own? You can get into a lot of rigmarole just trying to go through that. So that is an open-ended question, I think, still, and you have to figure out how you're going to protect your intellectual property on that.
It is, and I go back and we've had several discussions about who owns the code. We've written blog posts. Commercial Integrator had a webinar on it. The show that we do called State of Control did a couple of different episodes on it. I go back to, yes, there are certain portions that the companies themselves own, that the companies who do the job, that Dan would own. Yes, you get the software from the company, but you know what? You can get, Visual Basic and other programming languages from Microsoft and other people too. You get right, the software to write apps from Apple. That doesn't mean that they own the app that you create using their software.
Right.
So, all right, let's move on before I get in any more trouble. From GigaOM, Nest embraces developers, yay, and launches an API. Why is it about time? Is this something you guys have been waiting for?
From my standpoint, I have a thing I call interoperability, and I think the industry, and industry organizations should push this to all manufacturers of all new products, which is it would behoove them to make their products more interoperable, meaning they'll integrate with other systems. I think they'll sell more. You have a bigger sales force. You have somebody who's basically doing the installations and tech for you. So I think from a manufacturer standpoint, I think it's a great idea to kind of, basically team up with the industry to help it. They're alleviating a lot of their cost and problems, I think, when they kind of make it so we can sell their products. That way we're doing all the work. They're getting a bigger sales force, and then the result is more clients will use the product.
Brad, Dan raises a good point, but what's the likelihood that companies in the AV industry will embrace the whole API movement that has happened? That really is IT-centric. We think about it, API is, when I think of an API, I think of things like, the Google API and the Facebook API and Twitter's API. I don't think about a piece of AV gear. So what's the likelihood that AV companies and manufacturers will embrace this idea?
Well, I'm torn by this news, to be honest with you, and all opinions that follow are strictly my own. But yes, I've always been in favor of open platforms and open APIs and integration, and that's great. The thing that Nest has going for it, in my opinion, and they've got deep roots in the iPod technology, and that didn't succeed because it was an open platform. Apple kept that thing pretty tight. Yes, they made everyone could develop apps for it, but overall the platform was pretty tight, and to some extent that is at first Nest's strength, is that people who don't have a lot of exposure to home automation or anything like that put this thing on their wall. It programs itself. It does all these whiz-bang things that we've been trying to convince people to do in their homes with very little interference from users, from the actual people who are going to benefit from it. So I always thought that was really great. The API is excellent for existing systems. So if you already have a Crestron system in your home or a Control4 system in your home and you want to integrate a Nest thermostat into it, yes, you need the API to integrate it into it. So that is an advantage. But I don't know. I think for a lot of the newbies out there, it's the closed platform. It's the no duh. This is just going to work. It's tightly controlled by the company. That would really make it a turnkey solution. Now, obviously, when you get into bigger home automation, then beyond just a thermostat, if people do want to start integrating more stuff, then you need the APIs. But I think one of their strengths and just the reason they sold so many units was because of its closedness. I'm not in favor of closed platforms. That's why I'm just torn by the news. I think it's great to be able to integrate these things into a lot of existing platforms, but at the same time, I was also attracted to the fact that this thing just worked. You just put it on the wall, and it programmed itself, and you were getting home automation without having to think about it too hard. Granted, very small slice of home automation, but it was if everybody had home automation by now, life would be great, but they don't. I mean, it's still a nascent market. It's still something a lot of people haven't embraced, and this is a way of kicking in the door a little bit. Great opportunities down the road. I do think they needed an API, so I think ultimately this is the right decision. But like I said, I'm torn in the middle of it.
I didn't think about the closed platform of it because I was like you. I was waiting for the API because first of all, this was the worst kept secret I think in the AV industry in the last 6 months. The fact that they were going to announce this, but I'd never thought about the whole closed platform idea, and you raise a good point. Chris, is that something to be concerned about? Is this maybe going to let the genie out of the bottle when it comes to Nest, and possibly the honeymoon may be over once this API people start using it?
For what? The average user
for Nest.
Yeah. I understand that for Nest, but for what is my question is the guy who's going to go out to the Lowe's and purchase this and bring it in and install it is never going to try to do an integration piece to it.
No, okay.
Right? The advantage here is towards the integrator and the developers that are looking to play with it. Those guys that are going to the big box shop and buying it and taking it home and figuring out how to connect it to their iPods or whatever they're using, their iPhones, to control it and see their temperature of their house when they're away. Those guys probably never had any intention to pick up a phone and call an integrator to have their house completely integrated anyway. So, it's definitely going towards the for integrators, it's great. They can finally take the added piece of the thermostat and add it to the house and work their magic.
Okay, but I'm going to jump around and throw a couple other stories that we have in here. However, there are in the last month we have had home automation stories coming out of our ears. Everything from the Amazon home automation store that you can go online now to this week, Staples has a home automation system, for crying out loud. The next stop is Walmart. All right, I'm not picking on Walmart. My wife spends most of my paycheck at Walmart, but that's where we're going. Is the fact that Brad's right. Not everybody has it yet, but it looks very close, like everybody's going to in some way, shape, or form, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think this is, and I think all the stuff you mentioned is great. I think the more ubiquitous these technologies become, my take on it is it'll segment the market. You're always going to have DIYers and the starter home people get the simpler systems, and then you'll have the middle market systems, and you'll have the high-end systems, and hopefully this will expand and grow our market. In addition to the DIY systems, you've got the telcos getting into it. And again, I don't think they're competing in some of the same areas that most integrators and dealers are. So I think it could be a good thing.
And that you're one of the few integrators and programmers I've heard say it's a good thing. Other guys are like, wait a minute, I can't sell this stuff anymore because you can get it at Staples, which is still interesting.
Well, Tim,
yes.
Just to be fair, though, I mean, isn't the job okay? So when all over the years audio systems have come out, just because someone could go to Walmart and buy a boombox for $99 doesn't mean that people stopped wanting hi-fi. I mean, it's still us that sell the systems for the people who want to do more, who want better quality, who want higher fidelity audio, et cetera, et cetera. The market's never going to disappear just because a product comes out where a DIYer can go and pick something up for a couple $100 and do something in their home. I think, like Dan said, absolutely, the more exposure this kind of technology has, the better off we are, because when it becomes household ideology, then it's easier sell for us to sell the more complicated stuff.
Yeah, and I think the one good thing that came out of the Staples thing, if you read some of the stuff on it, Lutron's providing the switches and the shading, and they say that right in the article, and then Lutron goes on to say that, well, these are pretty basic stripped down switches. So again, I think that'll help segment the market. If you want a starter DIY set, you're going to get pretty basic on-off feature set, not macros or scenes or whatever they're not offering. And if you want more advanced capabilities or functionality, then you have to go up into a larger, better, more robust system. So I think again, it kind of more segments the market than does any harm.
Okay, so hang on for a second, Dan. I'll let you get back to that, Josh. How then do people find out about the more expensive, the more whiz-bang systems? I mean, are we assuming that there's going to be a brochure from Lutron in the Staples box, or is Savant going to say, well, if you want more functionality, here's a number to a Crestron rep or an AMX rep? How do people migrate, and how do they evolve from having a basic system to having a complete home automation system?
Well, how do people hear about integrators that do high-end systems to begin with? I mean, isn't it really come back down to the basic marketing principles of any business? Expand your brand so that people know who you are and that your product does X, Y, and Z, and when they need X, Y, and Z, they call you?
Yes, but what I'm getting at, though, is you're talking about high-end systems, and what happens a lot of times is higher-end systems go in higher-end homes, right? Not to be simplistic, but that's pretty much how it goes. Right. What we're talking about is getting into a market for, honestly, middle-class America. So unless, middle-class Americans have friends who have higher-end homes and they have these fancy touch panels and all this home automation, a lot of people don't know about this stuff. I mean, I try to explain to people what I do, and I'm sure you guys have ran into the same situation where they ask you what you do, and Dan, I program control systems. What is that? What exactly is that? And so, go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's why the Staples pack exists, and that's why maybe a Walmart pack will exist, and because no one's cracked that nut yet. No one's. A lot of the like you said, a lot of the great home automation systems goes in a certain number of homes in the United States, and there's only so many of them. And for this market to grow, it needs to start running downhill into and so far no one, to the best of my knowledge, has adequately figured that out. No one's quite figured out how to get middle America to care whether their lights dim automatically or to control things from their iPods or iPads. I mean, we can do all that, great, but no one's come up with a killer package that people have said, yeah, I want to go out and get that. Now, I thought the Nest thermostat was a great place to start. I thought that was it has a very coolish, Apple-ish feel, by design, by hereditary, by its founders. And I thought that I think still that has that's its strong suit, is that it's getting in there. It's starting to get people interested in something like that, and they're biting off as much as they want to chew right now. They're not getting a package that's going to dim 3 of the lights in their house and control their HVAC or something like that. No one's figured that one out yet. That's why you're seeing the Staples pack, and you're seeing every broadband company get into it, because no one's figured it out just yet.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, thanks. Then what I was going to say is the one thing you can put the nail in the coffin to with with this API and this whole home automation thing coming along is that we can finally put a nail in the coffin of X-10. Which was,
oh man,
I mean, but honestly, I mean, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm going to get killed for saying that, but that was your middle America solution to automation. for years. I mean, that probably kept smarthome.com going for 10 years, because that's where you went to get that stuff. But you could probably say that the X-10s are done, and now you're finally getting probably something that's going to be economical, that puts automation into it. And just like everything else, and the reason why integrators are still integrators, and the Best Buys and Staples can sell these things, is because it's going to always get to the point where it hits a limitation.
Right.
I want to control this, and when it doesn't do your air conditioning and heating system, or it does just one, or it doesn't work with this type of heater, gas, or it doesn't work with a some sort of particular unit that you have, there it will then go to the next level. Then it becomes, well, how do I do it? And that's where the questions and the search goes out looking. Like Josh says, we have complete home theater systems. Nobody's out of business. They've been selling 5-piece 5.1 audio systems. God, you can buy one from every manufacturer, including the lowbrow ones that you can buy for $50. But they're still there. But what it's doing is it's now blanketing everything, and now you're finally giving introduction to people, the technology. Even, I mean, I'm going to get long-winded on this, but look at LCD monitors. Look at those TVs. 10 years ago, Tim, you were a rock star if you had one.
Yeah.
Who could get a TV that you can hang on the wall? What did Walmart do? Yeah, it drove prices down, and it does what Walmart does to everything else, but it introduced plasma screens to middle America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's sort of like, you sort of have to have that balance. It's the force, Tim. We gotta balance the force. There's always got to be a yin and a yang.
Tim, if I might, real quick.
Yeah.
Before we move on, let's take a look back in history instead of moving, to the future-minded stuff. If you look back at any product that's come out before, like cell phones or video game consoles or really anything like that, I mean, any technological innovation that we've had in the last 30 years started out as something that people barely heard of, and then it was often unaffordable, and it was more complex than the average person cared for. It wasn't really applicable to the average person. And then all of a sudden, someone comes out with a Me Too product that's slightly less expensive, and so on and so on and so on, until we end up with the situation like Chris just finished saying. You end up with $50, Walmart home theater in a box specials. So I feel like the only thing that can come of this is a larger awareness in the common everyday household that these kind of products exist.
Go ahead, Brett.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
To me, the difference between the dropping in home theater prices or anything like, or big screen TVs or whatever, the difference between that and home automation is that it's not that there's not an adequate awareness. I don't think that we as an industry have convinced your average household of why they should even want these things. To say that you can dim your lights from your iPad just isn't enough. I mean, to me, they've just sort of said, they've rolled their eyes and they've said, you know what, my greatest lighting control in my house is the light switch. I mean, it's on or it's off. I do have a couple of dimmers if I need them. I don't need some of this stuff, and I don't think we've done an adequate job communicating to people why the value proposition of these systems.
And that's, I guess, that's where my not concern comes in. But don't misunderstand me, guys. I'm excited the fact that middle America and that these are becoming more and more ubiquitous. Where my concern comes in is for the manufacturers that we all know and love and have relationships with, that they may get passed by for these Me Too products, to use Chris's term, because this is who people are going to be familiar with. Yes, Walmart gave us $500 plasmas, and that's what they still sell, and that's what is still in a lot of people's homes. I guess I'm really more, giving a call out to the AMXs and the Crestrons and the Auroras and everybody else that say, you know what, guys, up your marketing, get yourself out there in the main lexicon of America, and get your name out there to where when they are ready for something more than just the Staples product or something more than just savant, that your name is already front and center. And when they're ready to go that next step, you'll be one of the people that they think about.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I think another thing that I've learned from, being in the industry 18 years and serving on the CEA board and other things like that is it is just extremely expensive. I mean, prohibitively expensive to educate the market about all this stuff at this time. So I think it is going to be, fall on kind of the manufacturer to figure out where they're going to need to target their marketing, because we've got to educate the market, and the average consumer, which 350 million of us in just the U.S. or more, is a lot of people to educate on something that is just now starting to hit the mass market. So I think that's one kind of big affront that we all face, is just how to educate the market. I think it can only help to get this stuff out there on the small end in the package sense, so at least people start getting educated on the mass market level. And then, like Josh pointed out, and like with everything else in the market, you have your low-end products, they hit a ceiling, it doesn't work anymore past that, or doesn't do the functionality that you want past that, you go to the next level. And I think this will, again, kind of help segment the market.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, you are listening to AV Week. That gentleman right there is Dan Fulmer from Fultech Solutions. Brad Grimes is here from InfoComm International. Chris Neto and Joshua Stackhouse from the Revolabs blog. It's called Revo Blog. They make a statement, a very interesting statement. The analog pro audio era is over. Welcome to the digital pro audio age. So, Mr. Neto, we'll start with you. Is analog dead?
Well, I'll give you a little feedback. This is Dan from Fultech, and we do about 50% of our business is commercial. And one of the problems with commercial is that they have the budget mentality of, we got to spend this year's budget or else we don't get it next year. And they'll typically buy older technology just because they have lots of older technology behind that. So it's been a real difficult issue to get some commercial establishments to upgrade into digital. So I think this could possibly help push that and force them to do what we've been saying for years would be more prudent for their budgets, is to slowly, gradually upgrade into analog digital mix systems and then digital systems, which a lot of them have refused to do. Colleges and schools are a great example of that, because they'll have thousands of old computers sitting around, thousands of 4x3 projectors or 4x3 screens, and they'll just buy more 4x3 stuff instead of getting newer equipment. And that doesn't have much to do with audio, but it's the digital part of that is having an impact on whether or not these people will change. And I think this will help to maybe force some of that.
Yes, but Dan, you know why that is? Because colleges don't have any money.
Yeah, it's all budget. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, it's all budget. But again, I think we've shown through some private schools who didn't have the budget constraints. In other words, they could take money from this year that they saved and flow it into the next year. We've put them on 3-year plans where it was actually much more cost effective long term and gave them 8 years worth of use out of their systems, or 10 years, versus putting stuff in just to spend your budget, rip it out next year, and then put new stuff in.
Well, yeah,
that's a good argument to say that there is a prudent way to upgrade into digital without busting your budget, but you have to be able to do your budget like normal human beings do their budget, not like the government.
Well, that is true. Good luck with that. But yeah, Mr. Neto, is analog audio dead? We're talking about the Revolabs blog.
No.
Okay, moving on.
How's that for a comment? No,
No,
well, it depends on what type of analog audio. Are you talking about music, or are you talking about analog audio as in microphones and pro stuff? I mean, you have the people that want their 2-channel audio at home. That's going to stay forever. But are you talking? I'm sorry, Tim. I dropped off the call and I'm now just talking.
That's all right.
Unfortunately, I'm in a bad Wi-Fi area.
He was right at no. He was
right at no.
Chris nailed it at no. I mean, I've hung out with some really digital savvy integrators. I mean, people who teach InfoComm courses on digital audio and digital video and some of these other things, and we'll sit around and we'll talk about an installation that they just did, and they did this boardroom and they blah blah blah. And I said, oh wow, so you did it end-to-end digital, right? And they said no, they didn't want to pay for this quite yet. Just like Dan said, not everyone's got the money or the or the forward thinking to go all the way digital. You can tell them all about it and the benefits of it down the road. But the fact of the matter is even new installations, some folks will still keep their analog, or they'll replace analog with analog. So no, it's not dead yet. We see the benefits of it slowly, meandering over the horizon, but it's not yet.
Well, Brad,
go ahead,
Tim.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't really see that in this sense of analog. I don't think that analog is really ever going to go away, because it would be kind of like reinventing the wheel. I mean, whether mind you, I'm still a rookie in the industry, so when it comes to the larger business aspects of things, I can't speak with confidence. But why would you bother if you're a small band or a small business and you need a sound reinforcement system for your company picnics, or if you're a small concert promoter or a bar owner or any number of smaller scale applications, which are a sizable chunk of a consumer base, why would you bother with digital if you're not in a recording studio or something like that that's a super high-end system that really needs to have, all those bells and whistles that come with digital? Why bother with the extra cost and the extra learning curve that's involved in that, when you could still plug a mic into an old Mackie 1202 and a couple of loudspeakers and go play in your garage?
Okay, gentlemen, since I'm the only one who actually, I will agree with the person who wrote this blog for a second here, and that's two words that are in the middle of this article: spectrum space. When you're dealing with wireless audio and wireless transmission, that part has got to, we have got to do something. I mean, yes, the FCC is starting to do some registration programs where you can register your frequencies that you're using. I'm sorry, I don't trust the FCC not to sell those off at some point. I just don't. And
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, it's the same as HDMI. I think, how'd they kill off analog video? Well, you basically mandated it, and now you can't buy any more analog video stuff. So it'll be the same with analog audio, I think, is when you can stop buying the stuff you can plug in, and they stop making it, then it goes away. Until then, and I think that is relegated to basically, FCC and Spectrum for wireless technologies. It may be relegated by something else in the future as far as low power amps. It may become a requirement in the future. Then you can't do your tube amps anymore. So I think that'll be the way they kind of get it out, or do away with it, I think. Just like with HDMI. I mean, that was we were forced out of any analog video basically by the emergence of basically HDMI only equipment now.
So basically, once the FCC does eventually sell off those frequencies, we'll all be forced to go to a digital transmission.
What can you do? Well,
yeah. My buddy Michael's going to make a lot of money that year. Michael's he's a rep for Sennheiser, so lots and lots of wireless systems, Michael. But yeah, that was my only thing. Is that was the one thing that got me, was that whole spectrum space and the fact that you've got to, we have to do something. I mean, yes, I don't know, we've got all kinds of interesting things. All right, guys, go ahead.
Tim, I was just going to say, when you hit with that question, is analog dead? The first thing I go to is, I'm thinking music. Between that, when you go to analog and you tell me about analog, I'll go 2-channel audio. That's the first thought that comes to my mind. Then it's analog telephone lines versus digital telephone lines. Yeah. Those are the two things. You forget about the digital spectrum and stuff like that. And they've been pushing that out. And the analog RF spectrum, that's going to be sold. They're going to be doing other stuff with that. The government has plans for that. At least what I read when this proposal started coming out a couple years ago, that this is what they were going to do. So those channels are definitely going places. They may go to Wi-Fi to do blanketed Wi-Fi networks over entire cities. I don't know. Or given to other organizations that need that, or
auction it off like they did the other one to AT&T and Verizon. So maybe they'll sell this one to Google next time. So
you never know.
Well, there are the radio stations out there that are taking the spectrum space, or the FCC has started to lax up and take the spectrum space for some areas and allow people to do low power broadcasting on the same exact frequency ranges that the larger radio stations are broadcasting on. So I don't see them as being as draconian as you think they are, Tim.
They're the devil. They're the devil. The FCC is the devil.
Damn the man.
Yeah,
that's it.
Fight the man. Fight the power. All right. Well, the last story here, and then a neat little side story at the end here. This is from CE Pro. This is an interesting question by Mr. Jason Knott. Should integrators refuse jobs for ethical reasons? The story comes... Thank you. The question comes about because ADT recently announced it would not install security systems at marijuana dispensaries. Even if it's a medical marijuana state, they're saying because it's still against the federal law, they don't want to have any part of it. So, Mr. Joshua Stackhouse, the rookie of the group, should integrators refuse jobs if they don't feel ethically right?
Absolutely. I'll share with you a story that was actually taught to me when I was at Madison Media. When I was in my design classes, we covered a story from one of our instructors who had a client who wanted to have a security system put into his entire house, and that included having cameras covering pretty much every inch of his house, and it was a large house. The client pulled the guy aside who was doing the design and wanted to have a camera put into his 2 teenage daughters' bedrooms without them knowing that the cameras were there, and the integrator refused. So there's an example right there. I don't think it's an illogical extension for a company like ADT to say, no, we're not going to put our systems into medical marijuana dispensaries.
So it's just an ethical question here. Brad, should integrators refuse jobs because of ethical concerns?
If they have them, then they should be free to refuse or take whatever job they want based on whatever reasons they want to take or not take them. Mm-hmm. It's really up to them. It can be, I think in this case, I don't think ADT is in any liability, concern. They don't have liability concerns here. I don't think anybody can get them for putting systems into a marijuana dispensary. I don't know enough about the legality of it, but I'm pretty sure that they're safe to do it if they wanted to. But if they've got an ethical problem with it, even if it's a political stand, I don't even know if it's a political stand or not. It may not be. Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, sure, you can refuse work for whatever reason you want. I mean, taken to a limit. You can't refuse certain jobs for, bias issues or anything like that. But, in a case like this, I have no problem with them saying no. Now, if I owned a security company, would I go to the medical marijuana dispensaries that ADT has refused? Yeah, I might. And I don't think that I would have an ethical problem with that. I didn't read into ADT's announcements or their position that it was an ethical issue or a legal issue, or I think they left themselves a little bit of wiggle room there. But
they didn't.
It doesn't really matter if they're afraid of prosecution or if they're afraid of liability for doing it. I don't think they have to be afraid of that, and I'm pretty sure that they're a smart enough company that they know what they're liable for and what they're not liable for. That it doesn't matter. If they want to refuse business, they can refuse business.
Yeah, I'm sure they had a couple of lawyers looking at the deal.
Sure.
Dan, is this something where you would, would you, let's put it to you specifically, would you program a system for a medical marijuana facility?
Yeah, I think, I agree with Brad and Joshua. I think, one, I'm an American company. I can refuse to do business, within the law with anyone I feel I don't want to do business with. We've returned checks to a client just because, before we started work, he called us up and berated us one day for something that had nothing to do with us. And we felt like it just wasn't a good option to work with this person. Going to Josh's example, we in 18 years, I've had that similar circumstance happen many, many times. We just made it a going rule that we don't install cameras inside homes. If you want to put the camera in yourself, we'll tell you where to plug it in and all that, but we're not going to put it in ourselves. So that way, that's more of a legal thing for me, though, not an ethical. We've had people actually arrested and go to prison in our city that were basically because they had cameras inside of a home, and if a child walks in front of that camera and is not wearing anything, that becomes a whole new ball of wax. So that's a legal thing, not really an ethical thing. So for legal reasons, we refuse that kind of stuff. As far as ethical goes, I think, again, we pick and choose our clients as for people who we want to work with, and that's basically it. So, I have no problem with anybody refusing business for whatever reason they feel they want to refuse it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mr. Neto, you'll have the last word on this one. Is this okay for ADT to say we don't like medical marijuana, so we're not going to? I shouldn't say that. They're not. That's not what they're saying. Their stance is because they say that medical marijuana is still illegal by the feds, so that's why they're not doing it. So
it's sort of, again, like everybody else is saying, I agree. Everybody's got a choice what they do and don't do. But how many, I guess, streetwise pharmaceutical entrepreneurs does ADT probably put security systems in their homes, not knowing where they work?
Well,
you know what I'm saying? And that could, that's just my question. There is, okay, just because that company's out there, it's transparent. This is the style of business. You don't know what people are doing. So now, are you going to start refusing? You're going to start doing background checks on all the homes you're doing too, because of what they do. You don't know what these people do for a living out of their house or out of their business. I mean, obviously, if it says pizza, if they make pizza, but even there, you don't even know what they could be or couldn't be doing. So, it's up to the integrator what they want to do and stuff like that. The last thing I want is somebody telling me what I can and can't do. But that's ADT's stance. If that's what they want to do, that's their business. I'm sure there'll be somebody else at their door the next day looking to put in a home security system. So it's a good advertisement. You don't have to run into them. If you're a security company, you're not going to run into ADT at any of those medical marijuana places.
This is true. And if you've never seen Breaking Bad, there are all sorts of people who do outside of the law things that look perfectly normal, and they look like chemistry professors. So
there you go.
Last but not least, last week, our friends over at InfoComm had an event that was rather successful. It was called InfoComm India 2013. So, Brad, congratulations to you guys.
Thanks. It was a great show.
It was a great show. It was a well-attended show. It was a packed show as far as the exhibitors went. And you guys already have next year the dates for next year booked too. So, I'd say it went rather well.
Yeah, it did. It was. I don't know we haven't talked about official numbers yet, but it was, I think, the largest of its kind first-time show that we've done. We'd been in India in India for several years doing roadshow presentations. This was something we knew a little bit about the market. We had an idea of what they wanted. But when we launched the show and when we held it last week in Mumbai, it exceeded all our expectations. I mean, we want to go over there. We want to help them grow their industry over there. And I think talking to a lot of the InfoComm folks who were there, they learned a lot from the folks in the India market. It's a very savvy market. It's in a very advanced market for a market that's getting its first InfoComm show. So it was a success all around.
I will say that some of the people that I've talked to in the industry that are way smarter than me, people like you and people in the manufacturing business, they have told me before that this is like a gold mine, that it is a rapidly developing market for the AV industry, and it is just getting ready to explode. So
it's the fastest by our own research. It's the fastest growing. It's not the biggest market, obviously, but it's the fastest growing market in the world. And when you think about where they are as far as their IT services business and they are tech savvy. They're eager for it, and they are already very services oriented. Their services portion of their AV business is already growing faster than their product business. And when you think about a nascent market like that, that's a pretty large achievement already.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that they're the actual population of India is three times the size of the U.S. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Guys, that's going to do it for us for this week. That gentleman right there is Brad Grimes. He's the senior editor for InfoComm International. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tim.
Where can people find you and find InfoComm?
You can find us at infocom.org, and I do want to thank Tim and the folks at AVNation. They help us produce a InfoComm Today podcast. Yep. If you ever want to hear what's going on at InfoComm, infocom.org/today. That's where you can find the InfoComm Today podcast. I do want to thank Tim and all the folks at AVNation for helping us out.
Well, thank you for having us, sir. We enjoy it, and actually, we have one coming up here real soon. So. Yep. Also with us is Dan Fulmer. Dan is the CEO of Fultech Solutions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's great being here.
Where can people find you or Fultech?
You can Google Fultech with one L, and otherwise we're at fultechsolutions.com.
Very good. Also with us is Chris Neto. He is from AVHelpdesk, but he also has a wonderful website called AV Shout. He has a Red Band, which is a group of crazy AV professionals who write and rant, and every once in a while they get on the mic and do a podcast for us too. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having us.
And where can people find you?
You can find my company at avhelpdesk.com. You can find my website or my blog site at avshout.com. Or you can catch me on Red Band Radio, which is our AVNation radio show that we, myself, Josh, and a lot of other interesting guests and bloggers have jumped on and joined us. So that's where you can find me.
Very good. And last but not least, our rookie, Mr. Joshua Stockhouse, the audio-visual systems technician for AMS. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And where can people find you?
Like Chris just said, I am part of Red Band, so you can go to redband.avshout.com and see my articles with the brand new website that we just redesigned. It's easy to navigate and find your favorite blogger now. And you can also find me on Twitter at StackhouseAV, or you can check out AMS online at AMS. It's not a good day for me to talk today. AMS-mad.com.
All right. One quick question for you. How is the AV wedding coming?
Well, the AV wedding has been put on hold for cost control reasons. It turns out that planning a wedding can get astronomically expensive very quickly.
You know what? I'll tell you what I keep telling my 7-year-old daughter: elope. Just elope.
You sure that's a wedding or an AV purchase in the corporate world, man?
Yeah. It's called scope creep.
Yeah, no lie. I think that's where I was going with that.
Well, good luck to you, sir, whenever it does happen. So, and good luck on the on maintaining the budget for it. So, my name is Tim Albright. If you want to follow me on Twitter, TD Tim David Albright. But more importantly for me and everybody here, an awful lot of people go into making this happen, not just the show, but the website and everything else. Go by the website, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv, we have this show, we have the Red Band guys, we've got a control show, and a host of others. You'll find us there. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook and even on the Google+. So AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. That's all the time we have for AV Week.